Hey, Part Dreaming. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this awesome session devoted specifically to dynamic content, HTML, and snippets. For those of you joining us today for Manufacturing Day, welcome. We have an amazing speaker today from the manufacturing space that's going to give some awesome insights firsthand of how they some of these awesome features today. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers, Mimi and Marcos. I will let you guys take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Mimi Klages. I'm a marketing manager with Graphic Packaging International. And later in the presentation, you'll be hearing from my right-hand man, Marcos from Circante. And first, I'll introduce you to a little bit more about graphic packaging and what we do. So we're obviously in the manufacturing space, but we manufacture what we call folding cartons, but what you call your cereal boxes or beer boxes or any box that you see in the grocery store. In addition, we also make food service packaging. So think your Starbucks cups or your McDonald's fry scoops, those kinds of things. We're all about paper products, and we're located all over the world with about 20,000 different employees throughout several different countries. So you probably have many of our products in your pantry today and just don't know it. So getting into today's session agenda, I'll do a quick introduction, go into some challenges that we were facing in our marketing department and how we used Pardot to come up with some solutions to address those challenges related to our content and streamlining our work and just working a lot smarter. So a problem that we were facing, like many of you, I imagine, we are a small marketing team that wears a lot of hats. And we're really working to scale up our content production with white papers, case studies, all of those things. And we found that as our content library grows, we needed to figure out how we could scale, but also deliver the best content to our customers and make it easy on us at the same time to do so. So, for example, one of the processes that I'll talk about today was our case study development process and how we were activating that content. The process that we had before was that each piece of content or case study had its own form and its own email template, which was fine when back in the day we were doing a case study maybe every few months, but now we're ramping it up to do 2 or 3 a month. So that wasn't quite as sustainable. And how the process worked is that a prospect would fill out a form on our website. We'd collect the data from that form to then deliver them an email with the content. And around that process, here are a few things that we didn't like and that weren't particularly sustainable. So each time we were sending out a piece of content, we needed a new email template per asset, which as we were scaling up started to be a lot and a little unruly. Additionally, we use form handlers with Pardot, and we use Gravity forms through WordPress. So every time we were setting up a new piece of content, we were having to build a different form in Gravity Forms and a different form handler in Pardot with a variety of different completion actions like those autoresponder emails, notifying salespeople, and creating separate Salesforce campaigns for each. So it was a ton of steps that weren't easily replicated. And obviously, we're building this content on our website and using WordPress to host the content in the form. So this was creating a few headaches for us. It was making our Pardot.org a little bit cluttered with a ton of different form handlers and whatnot and automation rules or autoresponders. And it really wasn't easy to mass update those templates should we want to change out some images within or a snippet of content or a piece of content within the email. It was hard to go back and change things mass. It was a lot of manual work to go back and edit. And then also setting up those form handlers could be a bit of a challenge for the team. I mentioned we're small. Our technical skills only go so far, and sometimes we can make quick mistakes when we're redoing a lot of this work manually. And we do a lot of content updates throughout the year, so we wanted to make sure that we were delivering the most up-to-date, on-brand, relevant content to our customers. So looking at how we address the challenge, there are a few different things in Pardot that helped us make our lives a lot more simple. And one of those things was handlebar merge language. And so what is that? So this is HTML in Pardot looks at the data on a record, a leader contact record, and it updates it in your email template or landing page, depending on the data that is within the record. So updating someone's, I'll show you what it looks like actually. Some ways that we use that is to update subject lines or preview text. More specifically, we use HTML to customize and personalize email content. So with someone's name or with their company name. Sometimes we use it for webinar registrations where the header on the email could say something like, "We're so happy you were able to join us. Here's a recording." Or if they didn't register, we could switch up that language and say, sorry, we missed you. Here's a recording, something like that. So we were working with one template and using that HTML to more easily adapt to various data that we have within the system. We can also use it to control the URL or call to action buttons. So the example that you see on the left is a screenshot of one of our case study autoresponder emails. So we have one email template now for all case study downloads. And depending on what case study page that person is coming from on our website, which you see is the first one, that recipient post object title, that's pulling from the page that person is coming from, and then it's serving them up that linked document that we have uploaded to WordPress as well. So we're using HTML there, and then also in the call to action button in the view the case study button. It's really simplified our lives to only have one email template and use HTML to deliver content for a number of different case studies. Then looking at dynamic content. Dynamic content is when you really want to configure different display variations based on different criteria. So say you want to swap out an email image or something based on some data that you have in Salesforce. You can really get creative with this. Some ways that dynamic content works is you must have a person's data in Pardot, and then you must build the criteria and content for each variation that you want to use. And I'll show you an example of how we've used this in the recent past. Last year we had, as I'm sure many of you did, virtual trade shows instead of in-person trade shows. And we were really missing that person-to-person context that we had when we were talking to leads in the booth. So we weren't quite as sure what those people were interested in during the virtual trade shows as we did with in-person. So we would deliver, and instead after the event, we'd send out a general email asking them what they were interested in. Depending on what they clicked on, they get a more customized email the next time. And we use dynamic content to populate that second email. And that's what you see on the left here with a variety of different machinery applications that we create. So we could customize and deliver more personalized email using dynamic content. And you can also use it to switch things around, like calls to action and content, depending on whatever criteria that you set. So love dynamic content. Moving on to the next thing, it's all about snippets. And snippets think more about plain text. You're not working with images here as tiny pieces of content that you want to update and scale across emails or landing pages to customize maybe a footer, talk about upcoming events. You can see some examples here. And this really pulls from, like I said, a campaign or a business unit information. It's not quite as related to an individual's lead or contact record. If you do use it in an email footer, you can't contain the unsubscribe link. That still needs to maintain or exist separately. But snippets are a cool way to just make your life a little bit easier when you need to update a small piece of content across several different assets and just plain text. So now, with all that in mind, we're looking at our new process, specifically how we handle things like case studies. So whereas before we had several different email templates, several different forms and form handlers for our content, we have simplified that into one. So we have one form and one email template to solve our problems for all of those case studies. And it's been a huge time saver. And the prospect experience on the front end looks basically the same. They still fill out the form on the website, but now the data is collected in hidden fields. So for example, with our case studies, we're collecting hidden field data on what page they're coming from, and then also what document we're linking to that page, so that when they receive the email for that case study, it's tailored to what particular page and case study that they were interested in. And then they receive the email with that specific download. And it has totally simplified and streamlined a lot of our work. It removed a lot of room for error when it comes to redoing those form handlers, for example, or updating query strings. It's made it much more easy to replicate throughout our business. And some of the benefits of this, again, benefits of personalization beyond just providing a nicer prospect or user experience, is that on our end, it's made our lives easier. There's far less time from setup to execution. So whereas before, like I mentioned, we were creating several different assets per case study download or post-event email, now we kind of have a one-stop shop and easy to repeat process. Fewer emails to build, one form to rule them all. It's so much easier for us to troubleshoot any issues if we're seeing any errors, maybe with form fills or with the email that's delivered. We have one email or one form to go fix as opposed to many, and that's really made our lives easier. Also, something that's great, especially with a small marketing team, is this has made it easier to train our growing marketing department. So whereas before the process of doing all of this work sat squarely on my shoulders, we did, working with Marcos, who was super helpful, build a great kind of how-to guide on how to use this stuff and how to use all of these different features that I just told you about to replicate the process of case studies, for example, how to upload them to the website, make sure that we're having them served out through the emails appropriately, not having to do repeated stuff with forms and form handlers all the time. It's great to be able to easily share this and train other people in our marketing department if someone happens to be out for a couple of weeks or something like that. So it's been a huge relief for us. But then think about the user experience. This is what the email design looks like. It's so simple, but we all know that there's so much more going on behind the scenes that make it so simple. So this is our case study download email, for example. The top that you'll see there just says, thanks for downloading. But if you wanted to just still have this one template and switch out that top line of text, you could do that either with HTML or with dynamic content. Same thing with that image that you see. Here's your case study. Say if we wanted to swap that out for, to be like, here's your ebook or here's your white paper or whatever. Using dynamic content, you can swap out that image to tailor whatever you're sending out and what other message you're trying to send. Same with the line of text that you see in the middle of the email, the thank you for downloading, and then you see those squiggly lines that indicates that we're using HTML to pull in the page that the person is coming from to then serve them the next stuff that you see in the squiggly brackets, the linked document that sends them the case study. And you can use HTML or dynamic content to swap out that text that you see in the email. Same with the call to action button. We use that to send that linked document in that call to action button. And then at the bottom, that's an example of how you can use a snippet, which is just a quick, plain text, simple text edit that you can put at the bottom. And that can be updated across several different assets that you have, whether it be emails or landing pages. So a few lessons learned here and things to keep in mind. Kind of the housekeeping of it all. A few basics. HTML may need to be enabled in your account if you haven't already. And how you can tell what the difference is if you see those squiggly brackets that contain the different variables that you're trying to insert versus what you might be used to seeing in variable tags with the percentage signs around that particular variable. And then dynamic content is only available in plus tiered accounts or higher. So depending on what type of account you have, you may or may not have access to dynamic content. And then you'll need connected campaigns enabled to use snippets. That's that simple text edits or text pieces that you want to update across assets. And then a few things to keep in mind with troubleshooting when you are testing your assets with dynamic content. You want to make sure that you're either using different testing tools to make sure that those fields are displaying appropriately. You always want to test to make sure things are swapping out and applying to whatever data that you're wanting to display. And then snippets can also take a few minutes to sync over sometimes to Pardot. And then for me, especially with form handlers, they can be tricky when I'm trying to, as I mentioned, I work with Gravity forms in WordPress and then use a Pardot form handler. And you just want to make sure that everything is aligning appropriately across your data and what you're trying to pass between the two. So you want to test your form handlers quite a bit and just make sure that everything is being captured and you're getting all of the data that you had intended. And then if you have any blank values, you want to make sure that you know the difference between global defaults and what you're sending out, and then whatever's the default in the template. So just a few things to consider. And now I'll pass it over to Marcos, who's going to talk a little bit more about Email Lightning Builder.
Awesome. Thank you, Mimi, for that awesome, thorough explanation of how you guys are using not only dynamic content and snippets, but also HTML to incorporate and personalize the user experience for all your customers. So that's great. Thank you for sharing with us. Today, what we're going to, I'm just going to shift over is you may have a question. There was a new release just a couple of days ago with the new email and the new landing page Lightning Builder. So you may be asking, okay, Mimi, you're covering all this really great things. Your templates are awesome. Good job. Can we use this in this new experience, or is this only for what we would call Pardot Classic? To answer your question, the answer is yes. You are able to use all this. So currently, if any of you have enabled the new email lightning builder, this is something you can test out. We already did that for you, so that way we know for a fact we can go and we don't have to depend on any documentation. So what do you need? You need access to Salesforce. So if you come from a Pardot Classic background where you only had access that way, you will need to have access to Pardot Lightning, right? And you need access to that Salesforce. So we checked dynamic content, HTML, and snippets, and they all worked. One thing to point out is as you're going through this new email lightning builder experience, up until just a couple of days ago, there's some options that seem to be missing. So you may see HTML, but you may not see the dynamic content block, and you may not see snippets. So as long as you can go to the classic way and just grab the token, you're able to bring it in here and still use it. So try that several times, works. And then as the famous forward-looking statement that Salesforce likes to do, just make sure that if we're talking about new features, make sure you experiment in a sandbox if possible, or just testing your account to make sure that those features apply to you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move over and we're going to go talk about a little bit more resources. So here, we're not going to talk too much about them, but we have a couple of resources we would like to share with you. If you haven't subscribed to the Spot for Pardot, I strongly recommend you do that after attending today's awesome sessions. Here we just have a couple of blocks with dynamic content, HTML, and snippets. There's a lot of content on the Spot that you can check out. And then here's a couple of other resources from Salesforce and other awesome consultancies or other customers of Pardot that have put together some resources to share with you guys. We're going to go ahead and pass it over back to Mimi.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And I hope you learned a little bit today about how some of these features can help you deliver really great personalized experiences for your prospects, but simultaneously make your life a little bit easier. And I'd love to connect with you. So you can see my LinkedIn information up here and talk all things Pardot. And I think now we'll open it up to Q&A.
Awesome. Thank both of you. I love hearing about ways that people are using snippets and dynamic content and HTML. It's always like crazy magic when you hear some of the awesome things that people are doing, especially that awesome one form to rule them all. One question I have for those who don't have these features enabled, aren't utilizing them much or at all at this point, is there any advice either one of you guys have for someone that's just getting started with either any of these features?
Yeah, I can go first really quick. Talk to someone like Marcos because I always, he's my go-to when I need help to work a lot smarter and not harder. And I feel like sometimes I don't know what I don't know. And I really love to rely on Sir Conte to help with that. So Marcos, I'll let you actually answer it.
Thanks, Mimi. Appreciate it. Hitting the point again, there's plenty of online resources that you can reach out. There's a Trailhead community. There's Sir Conte, of course, we'll love to work with you. But also our blog, free. You can go there. We've written extensively about how to integrate all these different personalization tools and features with Pardot. And then, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Mimi, who's our expert here. And then, of course, you can always find me on LinkedIn as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors, and we'll pass it back to Sarah.
Yes. So yeah, we are kind of short on time here, so we're not going to have a formal Q&A. But thank you both for joining us today. If you have any other questions for either Marcos or Mimi, you guys can use the chat in the platform itself and send them any direct questions that you guys have. The session for this, as well as the resources that Marcos shared on a previous slide, will all be available to you guys shortly after this session. And yeah, so thanks again to all the sponsors for supporting the event. Without them, Apart Dreaming would not be possible. So make sure if you guys have time to go visit their booths. Otherwise, we will see you guys all at our closing keynote in a little bit. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.